Okay, I'm a little zoomed out today, and there's a good reason for that. Today is the vlog for May 19th, and as May 19th is the 19th, it's been exactly 3 months since I started doing these vlogs. Now, it's not 100 episodes, because my math is terrible. I think in the playlist, the YouTube playlist for this, we're only at like 87, maybe close to 90, but we are definitely not at 100. We're still a week or two away from 100. But today's still a little bit special. The forecast for today was for some rain and thunderstorms. And the thunderstorms seem to have formed in the mountains east of us and are moving north and just sort of skidding by us. So I don't know if we're actually going to get any thunder today. I was hoping for it. I keep hearing these little thumps, but there's a lot of people out cleaning and doing stuff, and in this house, some cleaning has occurred. Somebody has gone into the rafters in our upstairs room and found a little piece of my history. And it is with some surprise and a little bit of sadness that I give you this. Ta-da! Nintendo Entertainment System Action Set. Oh, God. This thing is so dusty, I think I'm probably going to get sick from handling it, from all the microbes and crap that's been gathering in the dust in that rafter space in our bonus room. But I'm surprised. I didn't realize I still had this. I would have assumed it was thrown out years ago. And in fact, I actually have everything in this box minus the light gun, and I'll tell a little story about that. But as you can see, it is fun for the whole family. Or the entire family, excuse me. I'm reading this backwards because it's mirrored. That's how most cameras in laptops work. It'll appear correctly when I actually finish the video and upload it. So, action-packed excitement for the entire family, which was just me, and I tried to get my sister to play, and she never was really into it. But yeah. Look at all these games. Rad Racer, Kung Fu. Is it called Kung Fu? Yeah. That game. Oh, and the controllers only the rich kids I knew had. Like literally, these were a sign of prestige. A lot of people had Nintendos. Not a lot of people had anything other than this box. And it's such a typical 80s sort of package. This is just how I remember everything being packaged back in the 80s, especially my Transformers, my G.I. Joes, all my action figures. I love black boxes if they weren't neon of some sort. And yeah. So why sadness? Well, this thing is on its way out. I'm tempted to try and convince my very generous landlord to let me keep this and throw out some other stuff instead to make room. Because honestly, the actual system itself is nigh useless these days. It requires component cables. It requires composite cables. And most TVs these days don't even have component cables anymore. They're HDMI only. So to connect this to something, you actually need an old TV or an adapter of some sort, which most people aren't going to bother with. And in fact, a lot of the games, especially the ones on the side here, are included in the NES Classic, which has become a phenomenally popular device that Nintendo provides. And it's just a miniature one of these with an HDMI output. So it works on modern televisions, and it looks great on modern televisions. I've got one, so... Well, no, I have the Super NES Classic. I sent the NES Classic to Chris as a Christmas gift, and he apparently loved it. My sister has warned me not to get any more of them, because he's got enough toys already, and frankly, so do I. So this thing is probably here's what bugs me the most is that, like, the guys who make Stranger Things are probably, if they keep going long enough, this is going to come out in their universe, and you know that one of the kids in the show is going to have one, and it would be, you know, nice for them to have the box to use. And as you can see, well, you can't see me if I'm showing it off, but it's in pretty good condition. I mean, from the side, you know, here we go. There's a tear here, and there's, you know, the corners are dinged. But, yeah. Losing Leo has put into perspective that I am not getting younger. And time marches on, and life changes. My sister is going to have a baby. I'm going to be an uncle. I'm going to have a niece or nephew. And they're going to have their own toys, and they're going to have their own experiences growing up, and it's going to form what they are. Well, let me talk for a moment about what made me me. One of the reasons I'm a heavier set gentleman my dad is not is that my dad and his brother and his sisters grew up in an age where there were no video games. There was barely television. They had movies. They did not have social media. They didn't have the internet. They really didn't have computers. I think the first personal computer we ever had, I don't even know if we had one in Minnesota. I think we didn't get one until we moved here. So in fact, this thing is probably the closest to a personal computer I ever had as a kid. But it wasn't this one that actually got me into gaming as a hobby. It was the one owned by Brandon Till down the street. And what it was is it was a way that we socialized. So when I was a kid growing up in Minnesota, we played a lot outside, especially during the summer, but oftentimes in the winter. I've said the story about sledding at West Hill, I think, in one of these vlogs. In the summers, we played a very creative game called War, where we all had our little plastic guns, except mine weren't plastic, they were made out of wood by my dad. And we ran around going, bang, bang, I got you. And if we managed to get someone before they noticed us, they had to, you know, be like, okay, I'm dead, and lay there on the ground until the round was over. But that was a game that we played. But one of the great things about video games is it sort of made rules universal. For better or for worse. Because, you know, bang, bang, you're dead. No, I was behind cover. You couldn't hit me. Bang, bang, you're dead. You're standing out in the open. That kind of thing was very common among my friends. And I usually wasn't clever enough back then to pick up on how they were basically cheating to beat me at everything. But that was one of the things that drew me to video games, is that the video game set its rules up consistently within itself, at least the good ones that didn't have a lot of bugs. And if you figured out those rules and figured out what it took to get a high score, what it took to get to secret warp areas, back when warps were a thing, secret power-ups, all those kinds of things. If you could figure that stuff out, that gave you a power that held other kids in awe. And while I was already starting to become a little bit heavier set than some of the other kids I played with, a little bit slower, I was older, but because all my friends were younger, it sort of limited my, I don't want to say my development, but it gave me a sort of mentality of being a younger kid than I was, which has been an issue throughout my life. I always cringe when I hear people throw man baby around because it feels like hits a little too close to home. But I got good at video games more so than those kids did, perhaps because they were doing stuff that I couldn't keep up with. So I stuck to the one thing that I could get good at, which was games. And for an example, while none of us ever beat the original Super Mario Brothers, and I still have not to this day beaten the original Super Mario Brothers, I suppose I could go back and do it if I found a copy somewhere. I was the first person to beat Super Mario World. And I think I was also the first person to beat Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. which is another very popular game back then. And I was the first person to realize that you could use a warp whistle in Super Mario Bros. 3 in the warp whistle screen to get to the last world super fast, which is to this day one of the things people do in speedruns to finish the game super quickly, as long as it's not an all-world completion run. And the way I got respect from doing this, like, there were a couple very young kids that actually looked up to me because I could do this. And even the older kids that were still just like a year or two younger than me were sort of like, okay, cool, Spornus knows what he's doing. And that was such a boost in confidence that I needed in a weird way. I know. Looking back, it's like, okay, good, you're good at video games, and the kids pat you on the back. Really, that's what you needed? But I was miserable when I was a kid a lot of the times. I got picked on all the time at school, especially in middle school, and not so much in high school. But yeah, between my like 6th grade and 9th grade years, I was absolutely not happy. And video games gave me a chance to feel heroic, a chance to feel accomplished, and gave me sort of, how do I put it? It gave me a way to be somebody that I didn't think I could be. And I wonder if anybody's ever going to find this video on the internet and feel the same way I did. But it's not always about the story in a game. It's not always about how fast your speedrun is. Sometimes it's just picking up a game, playing a game, and then feeling like you're good at it and beating it. And that's a sense of accomplishment that people can try and take away from you by saying, oh, well, that game's easier. Oh, you should have done it faster, whatever. But I'm not even kidding when I tell you the first time I beat Super Metroid and got Samus in her bikini, I wasn't ecstatic to see her in a bikini. I was ecstatic to know that I could beat a game I really, really enjoyed under 3 hours. And no one can ever take that away from me. Anyways, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.